Welcome, symbol lovers, to another edition of Understanding the Symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. This is going to be a three-parter because we're returning to the Garden of Earthly Delights, and we're going to look at that right-hand panel known as the Hellscape, and we're going to answer the question, who is the man in the dead tree? Then in part 2, we'll answer the question, why is there a cozy tavern in the middle of hell? In part 3, we'll answer the question, is this a self-portrait? We'll be able to figure this all out by using a few principles for reading the symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. And we're going to begin with context. The Garden of Earthly Delights is a 5-panel altarpiece painted 500 years ago. The outside panels open up to reveal 3 inner panels. This was painted by Hieronymus Bosch, who was pretty much the most famous painter north of the Alps. So why was it that no one knew of the existence of this altarpiece, as amazing as it is, until after the owner was dead and after the painter was dead? I'm sure it's because they both knew it was an altarpiece for heresy. And even though the heresy is cleverly hidden under symbols, they were still concerned that the church might become curious and start asking questions. And the church wasn't very nice once they started asking questions. By the time Bosch painted the Garden of Earthly Delights, the church had been burning to death its enemies for about 500 years. And at the time of his painting, the Spanish Inquisition had been rolling along at full steam for about 20 years. And so the people connected with this altarpiece knew enough to hide it from the church. It's no coincidence that the monsters in the so-called hellscape of Hieronymus Bosch are all doing exactly the same things that the church was doing at the same time. So that was the historical context in which the painting was done. Now it's useful to look at the context of the symbols within, that is, a comparison with symbols with the other symbols. To put the symbols into context, let's look at the very center of each one of the inner panels. For Eden, we have at the very center the fountain of life, and safe in the fountain of life we have an owl, a symbol of wisdom, and it's right above the head of Jesus. So the theme of the left-hand panel is wisdom, specifically the wisdom of Jesus. And the theme of the central panel is that egg balanced on that person's head. And the egg is a symbol of fertility, the future, and of course metamorphosis. And so part of what they're doing in that circle is they're learning to balance their needs for the present with their duty towards the future. It all has to be balanced. The center of the right panel is darkness, and that is a symbol for ignorance, which is the opposite of wisdom. So the left panel balances the right panel. But above that darkness, in that hollow egg, there is that sanctuary, so all is not lost. And also notice down at the bottom of this picture, there's a man balancing on the hurdy-gurdy. And what is he doing? He too is holding up an egg. He's balancing an egg at great personal sacrifice, but he is keeping hope alive here in this spiritual hell. Bosch might have very well seen himself as a man hiding away from a dangerous, dangerous world, but still pointing the way to that hopeful happening in the hollow egg there. But that he saw himself as a guide who was surrounded by the great darkness and evil that was the Middle Ages. But we must now get back to our pursuit of the man in the dead tree, and we will be uncovering him using these principles for understanding the symbols of Hieronymus Bosch, and I will explain them as we go, because we'll be beginning with a look at the Adoration of the Magi by Hieronymus Bosch. This is full of great stuff and includes a Bosch owl hidden at the top of the barn. And on the same level as the wise Bosch owl, we have the head of this peasant who has clambered up onto the roof along with his spouse to respectfully view the adoration of the Magi. We see he's got his walking stick, he's a good pilgrim, and his full attention is on the baby Jesus. But notice who the woman is looking at. She's looking at what could be a man or a boy in a tree. And remember, the couple are on the same level as that owl. They're doing the wise thing. And what's so wise about it? Let's ask this guy. This is Peter Bruegel the Elder. 50 years after Hieronymus Bosch, Peter Bruegel was the most famous painter north of the Alps. And so the question arises, why would the most talented person north of the Alps put the time in this exquisite picture of what looks like the village idiot pointing to a child who is robbing a nest? And the answer is that this is a heretic door. This is a test. And if you can explain what's going on in the painting, then you can be trusted. You're going to be in with the in crowd. But first you have to be able to explain this painting, and that's what we're going to do. Although I should also note that by the time Bruegel the Elder painted this, his son was about 4 years old. So it could be that Bruegel himself is the model and the boy is his boy. And this is painted so lovingly because he loved his son and wanted it all memorialized. But getting back to the heresy. And to figure that out, we'll now use our principles for understanding the symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. And so the first thing we're going to look at is exactly what it looks like and what's in the middle. And so, of course, what's in the middle is this big peasant, and he has a walking stick. And so he's front and center, and there's really not a whole lot else happening other than he's pointing. He's not even looking directly at us. He doesn't want to pull our attention towards himself, but he's pointing to something else more important than himself. And what's more important than himself is the boy in the tree robbing the nest, and robbing the nest of eggs. So you have boy, tree, eggs. And let me remind you, just in case you've understandably forgotten, that what we're looking for is the identity of a man in a tree with a hollow egg. This painting is another heretic door that we're about to open. This is the marriage feast at Cana, and up there on the pillar we see a Bosch owl, and the Bosch owl is right over that little golden chair. And so that's our key to wisdom, our key to understanding. And so now we'll take up our principles for understanding the symbols of Hieronymus Bosch. And we'll be using, it's exactly what it looks like and what's in the middle. So first things first, what exactly does it look like? Well, it looks like the wedding feast at Cana with Jesus there, his mother is there, looking like a nun, and there's a bride and groom there, and there's a man filling wine jugs. So this must be the marriage feast at Cana. But of course, it's something beyond that. And here we're going to go into what's in the middle. And what's in the middle is a little man. And he's a mystery man. He's got his back to us. But he's holding up the glass, the chalice rather. And so he is the host. That's his little gold throne chair that's under that owl of wisdom. And so he is actually the key feature. It's really, the wedding feast is all secondary to this, which is why the bride and groom aren't in the middle, or the wine guy isn't in the middle, because it's really about this little man with his back turned to us. Or is he a boy? He's really small, and he's got that really comically small chair. And so we're going to look it up in the Bible. Is there anywhere in the Bible where there's a man or a boy who is hosting and toasting Jesus? And of course there is. Reading from the book of Luke, there was a man named Zacchaeus, a chief tax collector who was very wealthy. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but could not see over the crowd because he was small in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, since Jesus was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, hurry down, for I must stay at your house today." So Zacchaeus hurried down and welcomed him joyfully. And all who saw this began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinful man." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, half my possessions I give to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone, I will repay it fourfold." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." So what is the great heretical secret hidden in the story of Zacchaeus? Well, Zacchaeus is pronounced by Jesus to be saved. Salvation has come. But Zacchaeus hasn't gone through any of the rituals of the church. And it's the same with that thief that was crucified along with Jesus. He was pierced through the hand, but he was promised paradise. Again, he didn't get baptized. He didn't go through any of the rituals of the church. And yet he too is one of the, well, the only people more or less pronounced saved and pronounced worthy of paradise in the whole New Testament. And don't forget the Good Samaritan, who had no doctrine, no faith, but good works. An educated Ebionite heretic would know that, and would also feel the obligation to weave these ideas into his art. So the man in the dead tree is Zacchaeus. He's significant because he found salvation without the church. And in part 2, we'll see why salvation is like a cozy tavern. I want to thank my subscribers and thank you all for watching Understanding the Symbols of Hieronymus Bosch.